link if you can. Okay, so lying on your back, allowing yourself, we'll move immediately. We'll do our more breathing stuff towards the end. So just circling on your back of your pelvis, like your, if there was a clock on the floor underneath your pelvis, you're sort of circling around all the numbers of the clock. Or if that doesn't work as an image, you are swaying to the right hip, the tailbone, the left hip, the lumbar spine, the right hip, tailbone, left hip, lumbar spine, or the other direction, of course. Clockwise is fine. And if you don't know whether you're circling or not, just mooch your pelvis in a way that feels nice and mobilizing, and you feel a bit of pressure on the floor, changing the part of the pelvis that is pressured on the floor is changing. So you're mobilizing the hips, the lumbar spine, the abdomen, the pelvic floor, the groins. If yawns come in, let them come in. Yawns are very good for the nervous system also. And then when you're ready, take some movement into your shoulder girdle. I find it harder to improvise my shoulders. So you could get your shoulders doing a sort of cycling motion. So they're circling in opposite directions, like you're kind of, or not opposite directions, but at different rates, different, I don't know how to describe it. Yeah, like you would be cycling. Or they can circle together. And you're kind of like scratching the back of your shoulder blades on the floor and then lifting them and curling your shoulders up to your ears, maybe changing direction. And then taking your hands up to your neck, give it a little massage, particularly the bit that's a little iffy. And if that massage can create passive movement in your neck so that your hands are kind of moving your neck, that would be great. Because what I want to do is let you get motion into your neck, but without asking the bits that are a bit tricky to have to do the work, you know. Breathing. And then a little massage for your jaw. Get it mobilized. And your tongue, move it about inside your mouth like you're trying to clean all your teeth. And then articulate it so you're stroking the roof of your mouth from behind your teeth to as far back and forth over the roof of your mouth as you can. Tongue stuff stimulates the brain stem, which is where the vagus nerve is located. So that's also good for the vagus nerve. And then interlace your fingers, bring your arms overhead, bring your legs long, and offer your body a yawn stretch as long as you can possibly enjoy it. So much longer than just a quickie, a real nice, indulgent yawn stretch. Spend time with your ankles flexed so you feel a little pull on the backs of your calves. And spend time with your toes pointed so you get a little pull on the fronts of the shins, but don't go pointing so far that you get cramp, of course, in the feet. And then try and stretch the right side a little longer. And the left side a little longer. And then bend your two knees, bring your two legs up to the ceiling and point and flex your ankles. You can rest your arms or you can join them in up in the ceiling if you want as well. Rotate your feet. So just playing into the ankles, but also noticing how that movement travels up your legs, your hamstrings, your buttocks. And in fact, this is affecting you body wide, even all the way up to the dura in your skull, all the way up through the spinal cord. There is movement happening. And then bend the knees and see, can you hold either the backs of the thighs, the shins, or the feet in happy baby? The feet go vertically over the knees if they can. You might need to have a little look. So we're trying to get the feet high, as if your feet are, yes, exactly, feet parallel to the ceiling. And feet are as far apart as your knees are. And your knees want to be about armpit width apart. So it's quite a wide stance, like you're doing a wide squat on the floor if you were flipped over. And just have a little rock, little play. And then if you can, take the legs out wide. Again, you can hold anywhere on the legs, down into the thighs, anywhere between the toes and the thighs. And then take your feet down to the floor one at a time. Bring your hands down by your sides and rock your knees side to side a little, just to loosen up in the lower back again after that stretch. And then when you're ready, lift your pelvis up off the floor. And press your right foot straight down. So that's isometric contraction, where once we've gotten into this position and we then press into something like the floor or a wall, but without changing the shape of the limb, without changing the joints. That's isometric contraction, where we contract muscle without changing the shape that the body is making, or indeed without changing the length of the muscle. So pressing down into one foot and then the other alternately, going slow and feeling the muscles contracting around the bones of your legs and pelvis, buttocks maybe. A little lift in the pelvic floor may be naturally occurring. And if it isn't, just imagine you're trying to lift in the cervix at about 30% of your possible engagement, whereas the legs can work harder than that. And if that's a difficult concept, you're lifting a tissue out of a tissue box with your vagina, so that you can imagine that you wouldn't have to lift heavily to get a tissue out. It's a gentle pull rather than a harsh pull. When the buttocks and hamstrings, etc., are starting to tire from that, come slowly down. And again, give your knees a little rock side to side. And then roll to your side and roll to your belly. And as an example of stressing and de-stressing in pockets and little snacks back and forth, we'll de-stress by really wobbling the bum side to side. So as loose and mindless and effortlessly as you can, just flop the flesh of your buttocks side to side. And then back to center, and we'll stress those tissues again. So we're going to inhale and exhale, press the tops of your feet into the floor. That's also isometric exercise, isometric contraction, where nothing has changed in terms of the angles of your joints. And that's the purpose of muscles, is to change the angles of your joints. And inhale to relax, so that we can bring a cup of tea to our mouth, or etc. Exhale, press the feet down, feel the effort. Maybe you'll feel a lift of the lower abdomen, a lift of the pelvic floor. And inhale to relax. Exhale, press the feet down. You'll probably feel quite a lot of engagement of the quadriceps at the fronts of your thighs. Notice where else you feel engagement. Inhale to relax. Now,
you may be feeling as you exhale and press down this sort of contrary, something that's contrary to what I said before we started the session, where the exhale naturally relaxes the nervous system and where I'm saying inhale to relax. In the case of exercise, which is a different kettle of fish, when we exhale, as we're now going to exhale and press down the feet, our muscles naturally engage, our core muscles naturally engage, a lift of the pelvic floor and a toning of the abdomen. And inhaling, the muscles naturally relax. So when we're exercising, the inhale is an opportunity to relax the physical body. And the exhale is the opportunity where we have already some natural muscular support. The exhale is the opportunity to exert oneself when it comes to exercise, when it comes to breathing practices, where we're just looking after the nervous system. We're focusing on the exhale when we want to down-regulate, the inhale if we want to energize. Next exhale, we'll press the feet down and feel the engagement of the lower abdomen, but then let the legs float off the floor a few inches. The whole leg from the hips rather than just the feet, no bend in the knees. And then we're going to imagine that we're trying to lift a brick that's on our heels. But the brick is hard to lift. That is also now isometric contraction, where we added effort by imagining that we were lifting something without the legs going any higher. Inhale here and exhale here. And then inhale to relax. We'll do that one more time. Exhale, press the feet down. Tilt the pubic bone towards the floor, lift the pelvic floor and lower abdomen, and lift the legs. Inhale, imagine you're trying to lift a brick on your heels. Exhale here. And inhale, slowly relax. Now, after all that exertion, let's flop the bum side to side. So another de-stress after the stress. And then when you're ready, push yourself up carefully onto all fours, remembering that there are options for wrists. For instance, you can be down on your elbows. You can be up on the palms of your hands. You can be up on your knuckles. And you can fold the edge of your mat and put the heels of the hands on the fold and the fingertips on the floor. Tuck your toes. Draw your lower abdomen inward and upward, lift through the pelvic floor, draw your shoulders back from your ears. Inhale here, and as you exhale, float your two knees off the floor and push back through your feet. This is also isometric exercise, isometric contraction. If you can't lift your knees a couple of inches off the floor, leave them down, but pushing back through your feet, imagine that you're about to lift your knees. And we're counting for 5, navel to spine, lifting through the pelvic floor, shoulders back from the ears. 4, breathing long and slow, trying to let the belly stay toned, push back through the feet. 3, push back through the feet, through the inner heels. 2, if your knees are on the floor, try and lift them without success. Imagine they're super glued to the floor. And 1, bring your knees to the floor. Bring the big toes together with the knees a little bit wider than the toes, than the feet, and circle your weight over knees, hands, knee, knee, hand, hand. So again, de-stressing after stress. Change direction. Breathe. And we're going to go back and forth instead now. Back and forth. Long spine. Moving into the knees and hips. If possible, then coming back to center in this position, we're going to take the right foot out to the right and go back and forth. It's going to be harder. It's going to get into the right hip quite a lot. And you're very welcome to have the toes of the right foot in any position that makes this more achievable. So it might be that the instep is on the floor and the toes are pointing forward. You might be up on your heel. You might have the toes pointing to the end of your mat, or to the wall. What feels like it gives you your hips greatest freedom. And change sides, so bring that right knee in, take the left one out, and swaying back and forth. And breathing. And then come back to all fours and kneel up just to give the wrists a little break. We'll circle the wrists maybe. Unless they're feeling right now delicate, don't move them at all, just let them rest. And we'll bring the knees hips width apart, and the feet can either be flat or tucked. I find this next one easier if they're flat, the feet. Slightly tuck your tail under so you're not sticking out your bum, but I don't want you tucking under so you're kind of hanging forward. So it's just a very neutral spine, and really the tucking of the tail is only if you have a tendency to hang forward in the belly and overarch the spine. Keeping your hands there on the pelvis can be a good guide for this not really a posture, it's a movement practice, but more from Pilates. We're going to think the front ribs slightly down towards the hips again, so we're not flaring in the ribs, but we're adding some strength here in the side of the rib cage when we think the ribs towards one another and down, towards one another and down. And we're going to tilt back, pressing into the feet, but you're not bending back. You're tilting back from the knees. It's quite strengthening. You'll probably feel a natural zip up between the pubic bone and the navel. Probably feel a natural zip up in the pelvic floor. If you want to make it harder, you can bring your arms forwards and inhale back to vertical and exhale to lean back. You're not sitting or arching, you're tilting from the knees. And inhale back. If you happen to have a kitten walking on your feet, you could always pick them up and hold them out in front of you so that you get extra weight to hold. And come back to center. Now, hoping that the wrists rather, are sufficiently rested. Just putting my microphone in here. We're going to come back down onto hands and knees. And use whatever alternatives you need for your hands that I listed earlier. And as we're on all fours, just walk your knees a little further back, feeling free to pleat your mat or put a folded blanket under your knees, which I should have said when I got you to all fours. But come forward into kneeling plank. If you're unsure about kneeling plank, have a look. One of the things that I see often in kneeling plank is either this, we're on all fours. That's a healthier, I don't want to say mistake, just a healthier version. We're aiming for a straight line between the knees and the head. But what I also see is this, which is not a great version. It's more of a back bend, and it's not doing what we want, which is strengthening. So instead, you're looking for that straight line between the knees and the head. Elbows are slightly bent backwards. We often see locked elbows in this position. Tuck your toes. And we can add, it's already isometric contraction here as you hold yourself up with your hands, but we can add to that intensity by pressing the feet down and trying to lift our knees without success. So your knees are super glued to the floor and you're desperately trying to lift them as you pull your shoulders back from your ears and lengthen the back of your neck and lift your pelvic floor and zip up the lower abdomen and relax your jaw. Inhale here. Exhale, take a little rest back in an extended child's pose. So this time the spine is long, the head comes to the floor, and you get a lovely spine stretch rather than bringing your bum all the way back to your heels. If we're okay to do so, we're going to take that up a step in terms of demand. But remember that if you go up a step in terms of demand and your body is exhausted or feeling pains, or feeling like it can't sustain the extra demand, then that is a bad demand for your body. Where the good demand is for you is when it feels tiring but not exhausting. There is no pain, And though it is difficult, you could sustain it with good form, i.e. doing the posture in a shape that is optimal in terms of alignment and safety. So we're going to come up onto those all fours and go forward into our kneeling plank. So it's a longer than all fours position. Shoulders back from your ears, lengthen the back of your neck. Tucking your tail very slightly so you feel a zip up in the front of the abdomen, lifting inward and upward through the vagina or cervix as if you're lifting a tissue out of a tissue box with your vagina. Lift your knees, and we have more isometric contraction than when the knees were down. However, if the knees are still down, we still have loads of isometric contraction, and we can add to that by lightening the knees or pushing the hands into the floor and pushing the feet backwards. Micro bend the elbows backwards towards your hips, so it's not like a big bend or a press up or anything. Shoulders draw back from the ears. Lifting the lower abdomen, push back through the feet, push down through the hands. Relax your jaw and notice if you're capable of breathing. Inhale here, and as you exhale, come up now into face down dog, or if you want, you can go back into that extended child's pose with the knees on the floor and the long spine. Face down dog is basically extended child's pose with the knees off the floor. So don't be feeling you're under achieving if you're choosing not to do dog. Really, the only addition here is that you're getting a bit of mobilization for the legs. Knees are micro bent or a lot bent, depending on your ability to lift your tail and get to a neutral spine. So that just depends on your natural hamstring length. Doesn't make it bad, doesn't make you a rubbish yogi or insufficiently stretchy to not have straight legs. We're wanting to bend the knees enough that the spine can be neutral. Inhale here. And we're going to see, can we isometrically or add to that isometric contraction if it suits you? Come forward into plank. If that is already at the edge of your capability with the shoulders back from the ears, the lower abdomen zipped up, the pelvic floor lifted, stay there. If you feel you can add another effort, press the feet backwards, the hands into the floor, and see, can you lift your right foot an inch or two off the floor? Push back through the right heel or both heels, push down through the hands, micro bend the elbows, bring the shoulders back from the ears. Inhale here. If it's possible, exhale to change. Ujjayi breath can be really helpful, where you make the sound in your throat, which really helps to stabilize you through that exertion or to power you up through that exertion. If that was all okay, we're going to bring the right foot down and pivot onto the outside edge of the right foot, the inside edge of the left foot, which is going to be in front of the right foot, and take the left hand off the floor if you can into side plank. If it's too much to come into side plank with your two knees off the floor, come into it with your right knee on the floor. Push the shoulders down from the ears, micro bend the elbows, and you can push into the left sole of foot if you want to add that extra isometric contraction, or push into the soles of both feet. Inhale here. Exhale, take your time to do the other side. Right foot is in front of left foot. Left knee can be on or off the floor. Pushing through the soles of your feet, draw your shoulders down from your ears, micro bend that left elbow. Breathing, zipping up through the pelvic floor and lower abdomen. Relax the jaw. Long breaths. Inhale here. Exhale. This was our last plank, so we'll step back into a nice face down dog and see if that can be restful for you. And if it isn't, let's say maybe just your hands are tired, the palms of your hands, you could come to your elbows and play with your dog there. And because we are going to stand up in a sec, if you don't like dog at all, you could walk back, straight spine where osteoporosis is present, and hang upside down if you like. Knees bent, elbows on the knees, neutral spine where possible, and breathe. Sway softly, induce pleasure as one of your routes towards bringing the sympathetic nervous system down, moving back to the parasympathetic. Stress and de-stress, stress and de-stress. When you're ready, roll carefully up.
Yes, yes, I'll trust that. So we're going to lean our back against the wall and walk the feet out. And how far your feet go out is going to depend on how much you can bend your knees to sit down. And how much you can bend your knees to sit down may not be only to do with your strength, it may be to do with knee issues. So I would say prioritize comfort in your knees here, because knees, once they go, are very difficult to repair. So once you get to the point where your knees are bent and you're sitting down a little, you could be right up here. The knees want to go no further than vertically over the heels. So if the knees are here in relation to the heels, you need to walk the feet further forward. So you really have that vertical shin. And just being here is already, once you get here, is an isometric contraction just to keep yourself here, because you're having to create muscle effort in the legs. You can add to that isometric contraction by pressing the feet into the floor and pressing your back into the wall. Breathing is going to be into your rib cage. You're going to keep the abdomen still. Relax your jaw, but you might find that you are now bearing down in your pelvic floor, and it is difficult not to. So just have a little thought that you're lifting a tissue out of a box under your bum there with your vagina. Or you're stopping yourself weeing and passing wind, not maybe so harsh as to be stopping yourself pooing and peeing in a kind of like urgent manner, but just that sense of lift of the lower abdomen. If you're already quivering and knackered, you need to come up and take a rest. Maybe that's it for you for today, or maybe you take this little rest here, focusing on your exhale, letting the inhale take care of itself. And then go one more time. So the ironic thing about this isometric contraction is when you're doing it, your heart rate will be increasing, because the squeezing of the muscles into the bones is also squeezing literally the blood vessels. And that means that there is more blood pressure. There is higher blood pressure in this moment. But it must be something to do with, my guess is that the research regarding isometric exercise aiding the reduction of blood pressure. My guess is that what it does is it stimulates the blood pressure to increase, and that reminds the blood pressure that it needs to wake up and listen to when the need is there for great blood pressure and when the need is not there anymore. It's a bit like when muscles are chronically tight. We have to wake up the brain and remind the brain to remind those muscles that another state is also possible. It can get stuck. The muscles can kind of get stuck in this hypertonic state, and we have to wake the brain up, reconnect to those muscles. So maybe it's a matter of a very intense reconnection of the nervous system to the blood pressure. I don't know. That's my total hypothesis, and it's probably not true. Let's slide up the wall and let our rest be a slightly less bent knee version, and just rocking the back against the floor like we're using it as a massage partner. Oh, sorry, rocking the back against the wall, obviously. And if sound wants to come, that is really also great for the nervous system. So let's take a long breath in and a sigh out. Preferably a vocal sigh rather than a and one more time. And then when you're ready, gently step away from the wall. Take your feet neutral, and you are near the wall but not touching it with your body. So you're maybe a foot away from the wall. It depends on how you manage this next position. You might need to go closer to the wall. So we're going to inhale and bring the arms up, and bring the thumb and index finger to the wall above your head, opening your chest. Lifting the pelvic floor, zipping up the lower abdomen.
And then bringing the arms back down, we bring the arms out to the sides and you're touching the fingernails to the wall while the chest stays forward, body stays away from the wall. Now, of course, I should have said that when we have high blood pressure that's not medicated and not responding to medication, there are contraindications. We are not supposed to go upside down and we're not supposed to bring the arms overhead. But that is where you've been really warned by a doctor that your blood pressure is chronically dangerously elevated. And then take the arms down, step the feet a little bit forward, and we'll do the same again. And you may or may not be able to manage to reach the wall. If you can't, go back to where you were. Breathing, toning the pelvic floor. And then take the arms away. And the next inhale takes the arms wide, touching the backs of the fingernails or the fingernails to the wall. Lifting the pelvic floor, toning the lower abdomen. And then releasing. And walking to the top of your mat, we'll come down to the floor again. So we're going to inhale up if that's available to you. Instead of bending forward, we're going to come down into a squat if squatting is available to you. Take a few breaths here. Long, slow, satisfying exhale. You can allow the pelvic floor to relax here unless you have a danger of prolapse. After all that toning, it also needs a rest. And then keeping your spine as neutral as possible, stepping back into a very brief plank. I promised you that had been the last plank, but just briefly stepping back down to the knees, thighs, belly, up into Sphinx pose, elbows on the floor. Tuck your chin very slightly. You can be soft in the body unless this is painful in the lower back, in which case you should go down lower. Or if it just feels a little vulnerable but not painful, just tone your belly a little bit. But otherwise, relax. Chin is slightly down and just turn your head towards the right, maybe looking at your right elbow. You don't have to have your eyes open, but it's not trying to look over the shoulder. It's very gentle. Looking back to the space between the thumbs and then off to the left towards the left elbow. And back to center, inhale. And as you exhale, if you feel like a face down dog, taking care for whether you feel blood pressure feels adversely affected by this, if you feel like a swelling in the head or a big dramatic pulsing of heart rate, blood flow, then maybe don't. And then bring your knees to the floor and find your way onto your back. And if you can, bringing the legs up the wall. Get your bum as close to the wall as you can. Now, again, the weird thing about this is that this is a sort of upside down position, and though it tends to naturally slow the heart rate when we go upside down, it would still be medically contraindicated for high blood pressure. So I would suggest that you feel into it. Notice if you have an increased heart rate from coming into this position, or if you feel pressure in your head, then I don't think it is going to do what inversions can do, which is to reduce heart rate. So if that is the case, then you don't do legs up the wall. You come and lie flat on your back, or you could go into a nice restorative pose, reclining cobbler, or a little easy version of that. So that reclining cobbler without the legs is a completely different situation, and yet has its own benefits, where we sit on the floor and lie on a bolster, then the head is above the heart and safer where there is problematic blood pressure. Wherever you are,
Connect with your exhale. And see if you can allow your exhale without any stress to be prolonged. So don't make it a competition. Just focus on really ensuring that you do finish your exhale. Let the inhale take care of itself. Relaxing your jaw and the space between your eyebrows. And then could you imagine that you can see the neurons in your brain? So neurons are part of the nervous system tissue. And there are little gaps between the neurons. And in order for signals to be sent, they have to jump over these little gaps. Could you try and visualize the gaps between the signals, and start to see your brain as spacious rather than as dense matter? Imagine this visualization, this spaciousness coming into the brain, as if all the bits were moving apart like a spring unfurling, a spring lengthening. And could you try to look into the spaces where there is nothing? And every time a thought comes in, just visualize it as this entity or this energy leaping across space. Not in the form of words, but just in the form of energy, hanging about this spaciousness. Could you imagine that you are a little mini version of yourself standing inside this incredible structure? And every now and then, out of the corner of your eye, you see a thought, and it's just like a flash of something or a swoosh of something, a little quiet firework, and you just watch it. And then another one fires off somewhere else. And you're standing in this vast universe, just watching leaps of energy across space. Like shooting stars or fireworks. We never know when the next one is going to arrive, and they arrive in clusters, or there's a big pause between them. But they're so quick we don't get to hang on to them. inhabiting as objectively as you can the spacious universe of your brain. You're welcome to stay like this and follow my next guidance from this position. Or else you're welcome to bend the knees, to roll to the side, to take a moment before you come to sit. Just coming with as little disturbance as possible to the vertical, or as I say, staying as you are. And whether you travel up or not, come back to connection with those spaces between the thoughts, and thoughts as simple firings of energy across space. And we'll finish with a little humming to stimulate the parasympathetic nervous system. So breathing in, and you're welcome to hum at any note that makes sense to you, and look for the greatest vibration that you can feel. Teeth and jaw relaxed, lips closed. Two more, any note you like. Noticing what you notice again, giving yourself permission to stay as you are for as long as you like. But when you do choose to move, doing so by increments, first noticing the body, maybe offering some gentle touch or movement to your fingers and hands, maybe a gentle stroking of your face, spending some time blinking the eyes open and just noticing where you are, having a look around your space. And then eventually, as you see fit, rolling to your side if you're still on the floor, maybe offering yourself a yawn, stretch, and maybe a hand on the belly and the heart, a coming home to your center. And remembering this sensation and packaging it away in your pocket so that at a moment of stress, you can at least remember that this is possible. And in remembering this sensation, your nervous system may come closer to being in this sensation, even in the midst of the struggle. Thank you kindly.